It is the year 2472, and the Earth has suffered a great calamity. Hundreds of years of popular culture have vanished. Without the sacred films and texts for guidance, civilization is devoid of anything cool. Then, 3 incubation chambers are unearthed, and from within, men from the time of the great blockbusters emerge. Now, through highly interesting conversations, they share invaluable insight about what once was. The movies, the shows, the comics, toys, and books. This is
The Hyperspace.
Podcasting in the 25th century.
Welcome in, podcast pioneers, to the hyperspace. Podcasting in the 25th century. The interweb's first and only podcast. My name is Jared.
And I'm Matt.
And I'm Mike.
And gentlemen, tonight we've got yet another Retroactive Rewind review. I don't even know where to begin.
Man, you know what's cool about this movie?
That it exists.
It's been around a long time, but just now, I'm just hearing about it now. It's amazing that it went all these years and I never once heard about this movie.
Well, I saw it a few years ago.
Of course you did.
You've seen all of our terrible Rewind review movies.
I believe
before.
I might have recommended.
And I have to say, what's really interesting to me about this movie is that it stars a pretty well-known actress. And there's some amazing trivia about this actress in this movie that I never heard about. So this was a great movie for us to do. And it completely took me by surprise about what I saw.
Yeah, I would say, without spoiling what we thought, it was by far my favorite of the pieces of crap that we've watched so far.
Oh, without question.
But yeah, we will be talking more about that shortly.
Should we tell them what it is?
Oh yeah, it is Roar. And man, I don't even.
No,
we
you
can't
gotta
say
wait
any
because
more
it's
than
just
that.
too much to get into, and so you gotta hang out for a second because once we get into it, we can't get away from it.
That's true. Just like a lion grabbing at our boat, it will
Just like
not
a-
let us get away.
Just like a cast member of the movie. They couldn't get away.
Oh my gosh! So I started a few days ago. I don't know if you guys seen this yet. Have you guys watched on Netflix the Dark Crystal prequel?
No, I keep
No.
meaning to. I want to watch it.
So I'm a few episodes into it now, and it's interesting. And I have to say, it's just like the original in the sense that it's with live action puppets, and I mean it's the detail work is identical to the first. Of course, you got some CGI mats in the background and stuff, which is really beautiful, and the world is very much expanded. But I have to say, watching it, I really feel like I'm watching this to complete a nostalgic picture, because I think if I was just watching this now as someone younger, I don't know if I'd be really into it that much. Because watching the Dark Crystal, the original, I can watch that now, and I can watch it because it was a fun favorite of mine when I was a kid, and there's a good nostalgic, part of me on that. But watching this stuff now, watching the puppets, a whole movie, it's not as easy to do at my age as it was when I was a kid. And nostalgia is really powering me through this. Not that it's not interesting, but the visual medium that they're presenting it in is not as easy to watch as it was when I was a kid. There's just been too much in between then and now for me to diversify my palette with, per se. Does that make sense?
Yes, because now they're using the puppets as a stylistic choice. It's not out of necessity because that's the only technology available to them like it was in the early 80s.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, I'm not saying it's not. It's very impressive. They did an amazing job, and they certainly have captured the look.
But when they do stuff like that, it's like cool that it's not becoming a lost art. You know what I mean?
I appreciate that that's what it is, and it is cool to watch for that reason. But I'm just saying, as far as grabbing me and drawing me in, not so much. Not so much. So
Yeah,
Well, I need to watch
I
it
do-
and tell you why you're wrong.
Okay.
You should.
But I do think I think like the puppetry in general, I think that's why the Muppets have had a hard time finding their place in
Yeah, it could be.
this modern era. I think a lot of people may be like you. It's just like the whole puppetry aspect it's innately primitive. You know, I mean, it takes great skill to pull it off, but there is something that could be lost just in today's the viewer of today who don't really get it.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. This series has like Mark Hamill in it. It has Simon Pegg. It has some really cool names, and the story is great. I mean, it has a very engaging story, but really the medium that they're using is just it's not capturing me like I thought it would. And, you know, I've moved on I think in my entertainment tastes per se, but I can watch the first one and be nostalgic about it and enjoy it. I'm not quite enjoying this one as much. But that said, Mike, you should watch it. And Jared, you should watch it.
Yes,
It's a heck of a story. It's a great story. It's just...
Don't tell me what to do. I'll watch it if I want to.
And with that said, why don't we check out some news?
Do it.
News from the interwebs.
Some big news just dropped a couple days ago. Seems that the novelization of The Rise of Skywalker is dropping a lot of knowledge about Palpatine and Rey and maybe Rey's father.
Well, sounds like a lot of people are really upset about it.
So the news is that in the novelization, it turns out that Rey's father is a failed clone of Palpatine, which we already know that Palpatine is a clone himself. So Palpatine's son, or Rey's father, is a failed clone, which I don't know the story yet on how he got out, how he got loose.
Yeah, that's a little weird. This clone is broken. Let's let him go.
I'm hoping that we get a little bit of that in the novel and a little more back, because now I'm intrigued. And I have to say, I know this is very polarized. It's amazing how polarized this issue went in one day, but I kind of like the idea. I kind of like it because I didn't like the idea of Palpatine with a woman. It just kind of didn't make sense. It kind of grossed me out, and it didn't. I couldn't fathom the
good. Well, listen,
and people tried to he was in this position. It would have made sense that he had a wife or a concubine to show, but I still didn't want to picture that.
Well,
so I'm actually much more happy with this scenario than the other one.
I just would like to know why they let it. You think they would destroy any clones that didn't work? It was like, I don't know, just let him go, wander off, see where he ends
I don't know.
up.
We'll have to read the book and find out.
I think the thing that I was really surprised, that people were surprised that Palpatine was a clone in Rise of Skywalker. And I'm like, of course he was a clone.
Yeah, I think
how did you not get that?
We talked about that in our review, where I think me and Mike, I think all three of us kind of thought that it was a clone. But I think Matt, you brought up, his fingers are all rotted off, and maybe it is his original body. But
yeah,
the clone thing makes the most sense.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw this out there for the Palpatine clone. Okay, I'm okay with him being a clone. I mean, it fits. It makes sense.
It works within the universe.
Yeah, but you look at Rey's father, and he was obviously a younger version of Palpatine. So did Palpatine just opt to go, no, skip it. Make me old and disfigured. That's the clone I want. Just put me right into that body.
I think
that's kind of true.
Now, look.
Get rid of the young model, that virile model. Now, old and wrinkled and ruined.
And then you be attached to this thing.
We're throwing a lot of stuff against the wall, and we should make it clear we have not read the book.
Yeah, right.
The book was the book is going to be released March 17th, 2020, as time is measured in the 21st century. Oh yeah, the 16th. That's right.
So send all gifts care of hyperspace.
Put it in a time capsule and bury it. We'll find it later.
Yeah, just let me know where you buried it and I'll dig it up.
But the book was released early at a sci-fi convention in Chicago a few days ago. So there are a bunch of copies out in the wild now.
Sure.
which is where all this information is coming from. But, I think what we're going to talk, we can't really address everything about this because, like Matt said, there's probably some context that we're missing. We're just sort of reacting to the broad strokes of the news that, Rey's father was a clone and Palpatine himself was a clone.
Like a good Star Wars fan base, it's never that kind of like, okay. It's always a yes or a how could you? So I always get a kick out of watching.
Now I hate this movie even more.
I love watching the fanboys get all at it. It's like Braveheart whenever any kind of information just comes out. So
they all
I
line
just sit
up
in the
with
sidelines
their blue painted faces.
with their floppy axes running in the wild.
Their floppy axes.
I watch from the sidelines. I'm just enjoying it all.
Well, I think I like. It's no surprise to me. Palpatine was a clone. It sort of picks up. It actually quite a bit of Rise of Skywalker owes a great debt to Dark Empire, the comic series from the early '90s, which involved a resurrected Palpatine in a clone body, ruling from a secret Sith world, and causing problems for the New Republic. Which you could basically almost transpose the two. Of course, the details are different, but the broad strokes are pretty much the same.
Disney and JJ got to cherry pick the best of the Legends universe, so I'm glad they did. They picked some good stuff.
And
I was very happy with Rise of Skywalker. I have no real complaints.
I think all three of us really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And, although it has since become some sort of lightning rod of criticism, and it is currently sits behind The Phantom Menace as the worst reviewed Star Wars movie, which
is ridiculous.
I can't. I don't know.
Never go by the reviews.
It's like The Last
Exactly.
Jedi was never made.
Yeah, that the Rise of Skywalker picked up the bruised and bloody corpse of Star Wars from the salt flats of Crate and drug it and rehabilitated it in a way that I didn't think would have been possible. But I think Rise of Skywalker exceeded all my expectations in that way. It was a fun movie to watch. It was, I enjoyed everything about it. But to get back into the weeds here with the clones, there are a lot of things. That movie played with some very big ideas involving Palpatine, and and it really didn't get into the minutia of how it happened. I think we talked about everybody's favorite Hobbit and heroin junkie rock star Dominic Monaghan. He
just throws out the disposition.
Yeah, he's just like
exposition. Sorry,
he's like, hey, I read Dark Empire. This is how it happened.
Sith magic.
Yes, clones, Sith magic, dark side. Yes, okay. And for me, actually, for me in the movie, that was fine. I bought
because
it.
that stuff was already kind of they're not like creating new stuff.
Exactly.
There were clones. They're Sith. What else do you need?
And it was a fine device. I have no complaints.
And I think that I wonder if the book will reveal, because in Dark Empire, the very essence of who Palpatine was, his spirit was so filled with dark side energy. He basically ran through clones like, a fat guy runs through CC's Pizza. He just the vessels couldn't.
First.
Yes, the vessels could not handle his. They just broke down because of the dark side energy flowing through them, and I think that may be something that's addressed in the book, because obviously the clone he's in the movie is all messed up in all kinds of ways.
Yeah,
he doesn't have fingers, and he's blind, and his teeth are purple.
Well, he's taking the Mentat juice.
Yes.
Sappho juice. This is going to be the first Star Wars novel or novelization, I should say, that I'm going to read. So I'm looking.
Oh, wow.
forward to it.
Really?
I'm hoping Chuck Wendig
Yeah.
wrote it, didn't he?
No. It was actually by an author named Ray Carson from a screenplay by Chris Terrio and J.J. Abrams. I want to get back to what you talked about originally, though, the father being released. The clone that was apparently of no use to him.
Yeah.
That he's like a
like
kid.
a door opening, and this befuddled person just wanders out into the wild.
Here's what I see: like Palpatine has like a bunch of like he's like the father who has like 3 or 4 sons who are like great athletic specimens, like super jocks, and then he's got the little nerd. So he's got like 4 Snokes lined up, and then he's got this little crappy guy he has no use for, and he's just like, "Oh, let him go. I have no use for you."
You see, I see it differently. To me, I think it's like a Raising Arizona situation where you had all these clones of him running around as little babies, and some of his Sith sycophants like snagged one.
Interesting.
And
He's
then
yelling.
it got
He's
away.
like, no
Well-
sheaves, no sheaves.
Well, but here's another.
He's out there somewhere.
Well, here's another thing.
He had his jammies, had Yodas and stuff on it.
Here's something that could be a possibility. So Palpatine, in the past, has prided himself on foreseeing the future. Like he can foresee different things. Maybe he saw in this failed experiment the potential of the offspring of this clone. And
That's a great point.
and he said, "Okay, you will serve a purpose, so I'm going to allow you to escape."
Well, Jared, to that point, if you're going back to the comics, if they're cherry picking some of this stuff out, listen, the clone that we saw of Palpatine was a wreck, and maybe that's the case. Maybe he is burning through clones that we're going to find out in the novel, and maybe he saw this as a permanent way or more permanent way if he can get some offspring out there that to transfer his essence to that would be a much more permanent way to do it. So it's kind of like the long game on that.
And I think I'm also curious to see what they have to say, if anything, about Snoke, because
Yeah, I would like to have more info on him.
Snoke was, I mean, obviously you see in the film he's growing Snokes in pickle jars.
And he's grown them all weird looking.
Yeah, because so is Snoke some kind of abomination? Because he can obviously, Snoke could use the Force, and he was powerful. So I'm just wondering if maybe Snoke was some sort of aberration, and that it just happened to work out for him. Because I guess
Or maybe it was like purposely deformed version of Palpatine, so he wasn't recognizable.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. It was Palpatine. Was Snoke Palpatine? I mean, I think we're led to believe he was. Like, was Palpatine inside Snoke?
Well, I don't know. Maybe he was controlling Snoke. I don't.
Yeah.
I kind of figure that Palpatine was in his weirdo, decrepit body
Sure.
the whole time.
Yeah, like just kind of calling the shots from Exegol there.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, there's a lot of open-ended questions here, and we're going to hopefully get everything answered by the time we read the book.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
but yeah, all good thoughts. Guys, whether you like it or not, Rey's father is a failed Palpatine clone.
I
Well
hate
done.
it. You know what? I'm not even doing this. I'm out of here.
It kind of came to us as a little bit of a random shock. So, in the spirit of being random, why don't we go in a little random space ourselves?
That was a nice segue.
Random access memory.
All right. So, guys, for tonight's random access memory segment, I wanted to keep it within the theme of the show that we're doing. And I want to know if you have had any uncomfortable, scary, or dangerous encounters, not with, lions per se, but maybe an animal, or you've witnessed something that has terrified you from an animal.
Oh,
Like at the zoo or something, or have you been bit by a dog or something? I'm curious. I want to know this stuff.
I'll take point on this one. So I was 1986, so I was 11 years old. And so my great uncle lived in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and my brother and I flew up and we spent a week at his house. And he was an interesting guy. I had never met him before, so I stayed with him and his family. And actually, that's where for the first time I saw Dune, the Dune novels. My cousin, or my great cousin, whatever he is, he read all the Dune books, so I was fascinated by it. And I just after this trip, I had seen the Dune movie. So anyways, I digress. I'm sorry.
yeah.
But while we were up there, he took us all to the zoo. We went to the Philadelphia Zoo, which is a pretty impressive zoo. And while we were there, they had a big cat display, which is perfect for the movie we're going to talk about. And the way this cat display was set up was it was an indoor kind of building. And you walk down the center row, and on either side of you were these big cages. And the cages were bar cages. They weren't glassed off. They were bars. And you could only get so close to the bars. So we were all going down, and we saw some lions. We saw some neat tigers. And my brother was... my brother went up to a tiger, and the tiger was looking at him, and the tiger stared him down, and my brother was staring him down. And the tiger turned around, and the tiger put its butt on the bars, lifted its tail up, and sprayed my brother completely down. I mean, hosed him down.
Oh yeah, that shoots out like a fire hose.
With tiger juice. And then turned back around and stared him down again as my brother is in petrified shock, dripping with this putridity of tiger essence. And it was gross. And I mean, people they spread out and they left him by himself. Everyone backed away from this poor kid who's been dosed with this slimy, gross tiger gunk. So he's in instant shock. What the hell just happened? So my brother is not. He's not crying. We're 11 years old. He was not crying. We're twins, so we're both 11. But he was just petrified. He didn't know whether to be embarrassed or to be upset. He was just in shock. So we all exit the building as the waves part like Moses to let us out. And directly outside this building were, luckily, the restrooms. Well, unfortunately, the men's restroom was closed. So
Of course.
the women's restroom was the only one open. So he had to go in as an 11-year-old boy with my cousin, who's a girl, into the women's restroom to clean up, so which is doubly embarrassing. So after, however much time, he comes out, and he's red in the face still. He can't believe what just happened. There's people still outside pointing at him, going, "That's the kid who just got sprayed by a tiger." And my great uncle, to his credit, was thinking ahead, and he had gotten him a Coca-Cola. And, it's one of those, big Coca-Colas, but there's no top on it and stuff. But my brother had this Coke, and he was thrilled. This was his Coke. Nobody else's. It was just his Coke. And in my family, my father worked for Pepsi for a long time, so we never had Coke in our house. So for him to have a Coca-Cola in his hand was a big deal. So just as he's about to take a sip out of his Coke, as it's coming up to his lips, the world is forgotten. The tragedy is already gone. He's happy as a clam with his Coca-Cola. A bird craps in his Coke.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. That's a lie.
No, I'm dead serious. A bird crapped in his Coke. And that was the icing on the cake of his day.
Man, I'm not ever going to top that story.
Is your brother Tippy Hedrick? That's
telling you.
her life
Yeah,
story.
the birds
in a
attack her.
nutshell.
Oh, yeah, that was a bad day for him. Bad day. We talk about that still every now and then. But,
That is amazing.
Yeah, that's my big cat story, man.
Wow. Well, mine's not going to be nearly as good as that one. But I don't like snakes. Like, I really just genuinely am not a fan of them at all. And when I was a kid, we went out. My dad took us out on his boat, and we went out on the lake, and then we found some out-of-the-way area and was having like a picnic. And so I took one of my dad's cushions on his boat. It was like a square cushion with like a strap on each side, and it could work like a backpack. So I felt like a secret agent, and I was running around in the woods. I ran back into the woods, and I was running around in the woods. I was coming down a slope, and I put my foot down, and all of a sudden I just heard and felt this motion underneath my foot. And I looked down, and I had stepped right on this snake, and the snake was thrashing about underneath my foot. Ugh. Well, I just like dropped that backpack and took off, and I was like going Rah! The whole time. And I ran up this slope, and I fell, and I slid down it on my leg, and I got back up, and I just kept running. And my mom, of course, she doesn't know what's going on. My dad was out on his boat with my brother, and I just ran straight into her arms, screaming. And so when my dad came ashore, and we looked at my leg, I had just destroyed my leg sliding down that hill because I was wearing shorts, and I hadn't even felt it. I had just kept going. So that was horrifying. See, it's not as good as Matt's.
Wow.
But that was, and then my dad thought, so then like later in the day, I was out swimming in the lake, and my dad threw this branch in the water, and I almost crapped my pants.
He's like, "Look out, son!"
So it was under your foot, squirming. You could feel it squirming
thrashing
under your foot.
around. Yeah, I had stepped right on it, couldn't get away because I was standing on it.
Did you lived in Florida for a while? Did you ever go to the beach and step on a stingray?
No, never. I didn't.
Never.
No.
That's kind of how that's what it reminds me of when you say that, because when you step on a stingray, yeah, it's caught on your foot, and this gelatinous muscle just going crazy under your foot. It's the worst feeling. So I can sympathize that must have been horrible.
Well, and the fact that I hate snakes. Oh,
Wow.
so
Man.
So, as a side note, everybody, we did a project.
No, you're taking my
15
story.
years ago.
You're taking my story.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, tell the story. It's perfect.
No, this involves all three of us, and it's.
we'll have to post the video.
Yeah, we will. This was back probably around 2003 or 2004. We were the three of us.
No, this is later than that. This must have been 06.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
it's
because
like 06 or 07. Yeah.
I was living in Seminole, and that was like the last year I lived in Florida before we moved to Tennessee. So it was 2005, 2006.
Okay. So, but it's like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So the three of us, we were shooting this video project to a friend of ours, Jeff, was shooting a movie. And this was back in the early days of kind of viral marketing. And he suggested that we shoot a video.
Well, Jared, yeah, character. Okay, sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm telling the story.
All right.
Dang it. Both of you. You guys want to tell it? You know what? Forget this. I'm out. I'm leaving. Okay. No, so this little thing we were shooting was based on a character that I actually got to play in Jeff's movie. I was known as Drunk Neighbor. And, I was this degenerate loser who wore this trench coat and these Buddy Holly glasses, trying to emulate a serial killer who, anyway, that's neither here nor there. But so Matt was playing a guy named Kreskin Stone.
That's right.
Who was a news reporter who did hard-hitting news stories. And he was interviewing me, and he was kind of disgusted by my entire lifestyle, that, I was trying to emulate a killer, and he was actually pretty dismayed at the conditions I was living in, which coincidentally was Mike's house.
Now the house. Now look, the house was in good shape and my wife is very clean, so it was a nice.
So
house.
that explains the 18 pounds of sand me and Matt removed from your house when you were moving
In the
out.
bedroom alone.
No, that okay.
Okay,
You're
we're
right, you know
putting
what?
out.
Shut up.
We're putting Mike's business out
No.
there.
Okay, no, I have to explain. Our dogs. We had a doggy door, and we had grass in the backyard. And then by the dogs ran around so much, there was no more grass. So and Florida's sand, so they were bringing all this sand in the house. Okay. So,
Fair enough. Anyway, this is taking a turn. So for some reason, I guess Mike's neighbor had this broken down golf cart on the side of his house, and we decided we were gonna use that as like a prop. So
without asking,
the drunk neighbor's sitting on this old golf cart. And I'm acting like I'm driving it, and and Matt's like, "What are you doing? What, sir? You should be ashamed of yourself." And
Mike's behind the camera at this point.
I have a handheld camera standing behind
Mike's recording, and I actually broke the golf cart when my foot came down. I snapped it my foot like went through the bottom.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, you can hear it kind of snap in the video, but when all of a sudden you hear Matt scream out, "Holy shit!" and then you see this pinwheeling snake go end over end briefly. The snake did it go up Matt's leg or Mike's leg?
Matt saw
Mike's.
it. And
it came out from underneath the golf cart.
It went past Matt, and it went over my foot. And
it went between my legs to you.
And it went on my foot, and I lashed my foot out, and that thing went flying across and hit the neighbor's house.
You briefly saw it, like pinwheeling through the air. And then Matt instantly goes into Steve Irwin mode. "Oh, come and take a look at this beauty." And that is probably, it wasn't terrifying so much as it was hilarious, because none of us could really breathe much after that
happened. It was the most
happened.
amazing kick that Mike had, the timing that he had, because the snake was obviously I think it was going over his foot to get away.
Yeah.
And Mike caught him like perfectly right in the middle and just launched it. He launched it like a place kicker, and just the thing went, and it was gone.
And it was just it was just like a black snake. It was, harmless.
Yeah,
but,
it was a harmless snake, but it was fun.
But yeah, that was quite a story. Our brush with wild nature.
Yeah, that was fun.
So
wow, me and snakes.
Yeah, Mike just can't get away from them.
But we weren't the only ones who dared nature.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Who dared to take it on and make it a part of themselves and make it into house pets. Should we do it, guys?
Let's go. Let's just jump in like they did. Let's jump in like Noel Marshall.
See the shadow of the eagle in the sunrise. Hear the music of the children in the moonrise. Feel the power of the lion when he roars like thunder. Roar. Calling, whose land is this? This is my land.
Retroactive Rewind Review.
The movie we selected, Roar. This movie, I have to say, a few years ago, I was introduced to by some friends of mine. They currently own a theater here in Knoxville, like a little small local theater, Central Cinema, little throw out there. But before they had their own building, they used to rent bars and would show movies. And my friend told me about this movie called Roar. He's like, "Oh man, you gotta check this out. You gotta come look at this." And he was telling me about it. And I went to see it, and this movie is madness on film. Like, it's genuine insanity. And it's a movie about
it just scratches the surface of what that is.
A little bit of a backstory is the guy who produced it, Noel Marshall was married to Tippi. How do you say her last name? I want to make sure.
Hedren.
Hedren.
Tippi Hedren, who is also the parent of Melanie Griffith and two other jokers. So they lived with lions.
To go even further back, Noel Marshall was actually Tippi Hedren's manager and agent when she was on the Birds. And that's kind of how he got in the picture. And then they got married, and they did these like little like side projects. They were in Africa working on a movie, and that's where they got fascinated by big cats. They came across in Africa, in I think Tanzania, an abandoned house, like an estate house that had been overrun by a pride of lions. And they got fascinated by this idea, and it stuck with them. And when they moved back to the States, they got a lion cub, and they started to raise this thing in the suburbs of Hollywood, Los Angeles. And they became obsessed with these big cats, and they kept acquiring them in their suburban home and raising these little like cats into giant monsters. And it just bloomed from there.
Yeah, they lived with them. They literally lived with them. They slept with them. They slept in their
treated
beds.
them like pets.
Right, but the problem was they kept getting out.
Yeah.
They lived in the suburbs.
So the police showed up and they go, this is illegal. You can't do this. You can't have these. So they bought a little area, and I guess they kind of transformed it into a refuge, and he moved
Well, it was a refuge. It was like a big cat refuge.
Oh, okay.
And the cost to keep the cats at this place was so enormous that they said, listen, let's just sell our house in the valley and purchase this place and own it. And that's what they did. He sold his home, and he moved everybody out to this new, like in the middle of nowhere in California. And they all lived in trailers at the edge of this property.
And in the meantime, they continued to acquire lions.
More and more
they're not
cats.
stopping. They're not stopping.
And lions and tigers and
Yes,
oh my
like
gosh,
jaguars.
it was insanity. And Noel Marshall seems to me, after watching a few interviews and reading about him, that he was a hyper intense person.
The way you see him in the movie is how he is.
Oh,
That's him. That's not acting.
unbelievable.
So then they got the idea of making a movie with untrained lions. And
Yes.
there's a story that they talked to some weirdo animal guy. And the guy said, yeah, go ahead, do it. And they went, okay, let's do it.
So they wound up spending a fortune on constructing this giant house on the property to mimic a Mozambique kind of like Tanzanian super estate.
Yes.
That's the one thing about this movie that is pretty impressive, is I actually thought they shot this movie in Africa.
He transformed the entire surrounding property. He brought in like 2,000 cottonwoods from Africa to transform the vegetation to look like African vegetation. They built a dam on a little tiny creek on the property and made this huge lake and stream that make it look like it's on the bank of an impressive river. I mean, the pre-production on this was spectacular.
I think that structure still stands. It's
I
still
thought
there.
it got burned down or something.
No,
It got
no,
burned
well,
down in one of
no, it got-
the many
they had to-
fires.
I know it got destroyed during filming, and they rebuilt it.
So originally it was supposed to be a story about a family and lions. And as Mike said, this guy and this family kept acquiring different animals, and they kept changing the script to work these animals in and make sense out of it. And as they are producing this movie, they haven't even started principal filming yet. They're just still in pre-production. They started encountering major problems. Like there was a major feline virus that was attacking the cats. There was wildfires that were affecting the property. It was a mess. They almost had a curse. And the pre-production crew started to get like a little eerie saying going among themselves, because Noel Marshall was also known as an executive producer of what movie?
The Exorcist.
The Exorcist. So they felt that there was a bit of an exorcist curse coming onto this film. But they were having a lot of trouble. It was very expensive. As you guys can imagine, there was 150 big cats. There was a production crew of over 100 people. And this is every day it cost them thousands of dollars to feed the cats and the crew and to keep the production going and renting the equipment. So it was a massive expense. So they were drained on their money. At one point, Tippi Hedren sold the fur coat that Alfred Hitchcock had given her after The Birds, which was a huge collector's item, to help keep the production going. And they finally secured investors from overseas, I think England and Japan. They finally got some guys to come in and fund them just so they could start principal photography.
The fact that they got funding is a miracle.
Well, it's unbelievable.
Well, nobody in the U.S. would touch it.
No.
I mean, literally, he had 150 untrained, wild, majorly big cats on the property interacting with actors and the crew the entire time. It was a recipe for disaster.
It's the most completely irresponsible thing that...
The most reckless movie ever made.
No doubt. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, when I watched it, like, I felt like the crew and actors were put into a big cat preserve, and they were told to improvise and not die.
Oh, that's essentially what it was. And the actors were his family.
He put his
family.
And they were getting mauled. Melanie Griffith got mauled.
Before we get to that, so principal photography starts, and the first week, the director of photography,
oh jeez,
who's Jan de Bont, who's a kind of a famous guy now.
He gets a lion, sneaks up behind him and scalps him.
Yes,
Literally scalps him.
Yeah, director of Twister, Jan de Bont.
How many stitches was that?
Over 250 stitches to put his head back together.
No Marshall's,
he did come back.
I was going to say, no Marshall's son. There's an interview where he talks about how he took his scalp and flipped it back over.
Yes, and put a towel over his head.
His head.
So bad.
And thought he would never see him again. He thought he was
came
dead.
back.
This happens, and then the entire tech crew gets together and quits and said, it's after 1 week. Said, this is insanity. So they wound up taking people like there's a story like they took their electrician and made him into like the key medic. They start taking like labor and making them into key tech positions because no one in the union would work on this movie because it was too dangerous. So they start principal photography and they kind of secure their script. And I'm gonna tell what the script was, what the story was, real quick, because it's about a 30-second plot.
Yeah,
It's the thinnest of thin.
So Noel Marshall plays in the movie. I think they call him. What is it? Hank Marshall?
Well, he's
John.
like the
John.
only one who doesn't use his real
Right.
name in the
Because
movie.
I thought his name
I know,
was
it makes no
John,
sense.
But his name is I thought his real name was John. Because everyone else goes by their real name, I believe.
Yeah, everyone has a real name in real life in the movie, but this guy. But this guy, the main character, Noel Marshall's character,
He's a doctor in Africa.
He's a doctor in Africa, and they show him. And actually, there's a neat scene in the beginning of the movie because he's working on like some Maasai, putting a ace bandage on some Maasai native. And then they show him get on like a Kawasaki motorcycle. And this is where I'm guessing he's like a Dr. Dolittle kind of guy because he's like riding with all the herds in Africa, like among them. Like he's one of the
giraffes.
animals. He's racing a bull giraffe 3 feet away. And it looks like the most dangerous thing in the world.
And he's laughing.
And it's actually the only photography in the movie, cinematography, that's actually in Africa. But to their credit, the rest of the movie does have an African look. So they did a good job. But anyways, he's getting ready to receive his family from Chicago, who are flying in, and he's getting all ready for that. And while he's getting ready for his family to come, a committee of local people come to his house to question him keeping all these cats, including why he has imported tigers to the area, which people are not happy about. Mm-hmm. While this is going on, by the way, as he's having this discussion with the committee, who are all on boats, mind you, nobody came off their boats; they're all sitting on their boats.
Not that it matters.
He helps give birth to a baby cat. So he's having a discussion saying,
but it's out of nowhere. It's like they're talking to him, and all of a sudden he's like reaching between this tiger's legs and pulls out a baby. And you're like, what the heck?
Hey, it has stripes. It must be another tiger or a liger. The mother's a lioness, the father must be a tiger. Say hello to Henry the Jaguar, would you?
Not today.
This is as he's like saying, no, the cats are fine. It's a liger.
Oh, and that's what he says through the whole movie. No, they're fine. They're fine. They won't hurt you. It's like he's convincing them.
Let me kind of like, in my opinion, describe who the kind of character Noel Marshall is in real life. He's that kind of kid that when you were younger would like maybe climb a dangerous tree and go out on the thinnest limb and try and drag other kids out with him. Say, "Now, come on, it's fine, no problem, everyone, come on out." The entire movie, he is coaxing people to do dangerous things, and it is 100% obvious this is what he's doing. And
He's
the
not
actors
gonna
are-
hurt you.
Oh my god, it's so terrifying. And then he goes. His family. He doesn't meet his family at the airport. They hop on a bus or something.
He takes his sweet time. Like he knows they're there. And he's like talking to these people, wrestling with the cats, taking a bath with the cats.
There's like gratuitous scenes of him just walking through the house that take 10 minutes of cat. Oh, by the way, the entire time we see him at this estate, there are massive cats in every shot. I mean, giant lions and
they're like
tigers
they're
and
running
panthers
into him and knocking him over.
Oh yeah, anytime he runs, they knock him down.
And this is really happening. This isn't planned. It's all improvised. The lions are just acting like cats. And all of a sudden, they'll be having like some kind of weird dialogue, and two lions will start to fight.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's like a cutaway scene. It's in this shot, and like the actors have to stop and look at this unbelievable, and they're 5 feet away. And it's like something out of National Geographic what's happening.
That's another thing about this movie is watching the actors try to deliver their lines while trying to act like they're not scared out of their wits.
Poor Mativo, who is the African guy who's with Noel Marshall throughout the movie.
Yeah.
That poor man, he is absolutely miserable and terrified through the whole movie.
It's really honestly worth watching the movie just to watch Mativo's reactions throughout the movie.
And that's his real name, too. That's his name's Mativo.
And those tigers, they go after him, too. They're not... They steal his jacket. I mean, it's
he's like, "Give me my jacket back! Give it back!"
And he's terrified. You could see the terror. And that's the thing. This is almost shot like a guerrilla documentary style. It's like there is no rehearsal. The actors are really kind of improvising as they go. And you can see the absolute 100% terror in especially Mativo's face every time he's on screen. There's a scene where Noel Marshall is trying to coax him to sit down with 8 or 10 lions on a staircase after they had been fighting and eating, and he's trying to convince him to sit right on the next step down, and he's basically, Mativo has his arm extended, and he's reluctantly being pulled towards the staircase.
Put them out.
Mativo, this is their home.
What do you think you're running? A country club for lions?
Come on, sit down here. Oh. Sit down, you're okay. Oh. Oh. Sit down. You're okay, sit down. Hey, Hey, no more fighting. Come here. Oh, sit down, you're okay. Poor thing.
You are okay. These stupid lions are frightening me. And you're going to bring Madeline and the children into this?
This will be great for him. Not boxed in like back in Chicago.
It's terrifying, and it makes you nervous to watch this movie.
It's but the crazy thing is no Marshall running. Man, he'll just like out of nowhere just run off, and then he'll get tackled by a tiger,
and then he reappears in his tidy whities.
Yes.
Just running around.
Oh my god.
And then they'll show like lions getting into it, and he'll run into the middle of them.
I know, it start like hitting them.
There's one shot where they actually get him, like they get his hand and he's bleeding. He almost died of gangrene.
So, and he had been bitten so many times that his foot developed gangrene. And this lunatic in the hospital, they're ready to operate on his foot the next day, and some wildfires break out around the compound. He breaks out of the hospital. He has a friend drive him to the area. The car breaks down, and he winds up hopping on one foot back to the compound to fight the fires himself. He was just a lunatic. But this movie goes into high gear when the family, which is Tippi Hedren, Melanie Griffith, his
And
son
Jack and Jerry, or John
Jack and Jerry, or John and Jerry show up. So there's 4 of them. And they show up at the house without him there, because what had happened was Motivo and Noel Marshall have left in a car with 2 tigers for some reason.
They leave with in a boat.
Oh, that's right. They left in a boat, and the boat sank. That's right.
That's right, because he wasn't paying attention, and he hit a log.
Which I think was not intentional. I think that was just what happened in the movie, and they sank the boat, and they just changed the script to put him in a car. But so nobody's at the house. So the family arrives at the house, surprised that there are over 100 big cats wandering
Well, when they
around.
get
And
there, none of the lions are around the house. So they go in the house,
Yeah,
and
they're
they
just
like
walking
open all the
around.
windows. Let's open all the windows.
They're like, "Where's Dad at? Where's Dad?"
And then it becomes like
Night of Living
a
Dead.
horror movie where they are being stalked nonstop in the house by these giant cats. There's a scene where they're in the house where they look outside and the lions and tigers are consuming a zebra.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that
And-
thing at the beginning about no animals being harmed, that's bull crap. Because that
Well,
was
they had to feed. They had to
that
feed them.
was
But I mean,
a zebra, man.
but there's a zebra being torn apart, and they bring it into the house. Now
Yes.
these are lions with real blood on their face. They're eating big pieces of zebra meat, and they are running after the actors. And so there were safe words the actors had for Noel Marshall, where if they felt that the scene was getting too intense, they'd yell out their safe word, and that was supposed to signal everyone to cut the scene and get everyone out. And Noel Marshall apparently was infamous for ignoring Melanie Griffith when she would use her safe word. And it got to the point where even his sons were starting to confront Noel Marshall about it, saying that he was putting her in too much danger in this show.
Well, with good reason, because
Well, she quit, remember?
when she was she got disfigured.
Yeah, her face. She had to have facial reconstruction done. And she was wearing a wig through some of the movie because her hair got pulled off. Like, there's a shot of her in the movie where a lion is pulling her hair and pulling her head back, and she is screaming.
Yeah,
Oh,
and that's real.
The terror is real. So she had quit the movie. She was concerned that, and remember, Melanie Griffith had grown up with these lions and tigers
Well,
at her residence.
You
So she
also-
knew what she was getting into.
But you got to. They also filmed this movie over the course of 4 years. Did you
Right.
know that? So,
Yeah.
so Melanie Griffith. I mean, she was like 18, 19 when it started. So she was in her early 20s.
She was cute, by the way.
Well, but her appearance changed.
Yeah, she's real baby faced at the beginning.
Yeah, because it took so long to film this, and Melanie Griffith was actually his stepdaughter that
Right.
Tippi Hedren brought into the marriage.
Right. So she quit the movie. She was very concerned about her safety. And then Noel Marshall convinced her to come back in. And as her mother detailed, what had happened was a lion had come up behind her and wrapped its paws around her face. And instead of her going back with the lion, which I guess they were kind of familiar with, she went forward and the lion tore her face to pieces.
Ugh.
And it was just a mess. And this movie had 70 plus injuries from big cats throughout its production. Over 70 crew members and actors were injured over the course of filming this movie.
Tippi Hedren had her leg broken by an elephant.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Then they said the shots in the movie. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh. Which, by the way, the elephant, oh gee, yeah, where do you even go with this movie? I mean, at one point they are escaping in a little rowboat in their pond, and it's actually a very funny scene because you have John, the son, rowing in the front, and the lions are walking along the bank of the river, following them, and for some reason he gets right up next to the bank, and a giant lion keeps pawing him, and it won't let the boat go,
He
and
keeps
this
pulling
goes
the
on for
boat
like 5
back.
minutes.
Yeah, he keeps
For like
pulling the
5
boat
minutes.
back. They can't get away
And
from
then
it.
they wind up going across the bank where a giant bull elephant destroys the boat on camera.
Oh
I mean,
man,
it
it's like a
it gored the
10-minute
boat.
scene. It just keeps destroying the boat. It puts its
And
tusks
after it
through
destroyed the boat, it grabbed Tippi Hedren
Yes.
and snapped her ankle, which he kept in the movie.
Yes.
Oh my, it was insane. It was insane. It was such a nerve-wracking movie to watch.
But the thing about the movie was too, you don't know what it's supposed to be. Is it supposed to be a horror movie, or are they trying to make a family movie? Because there'd be times when they're running around the house and they're playing this music that's like do 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 do.
They build this movie as a comedy when you look.
But there's people like getting mauled.
They build it as a comedy. So I'm going to read you a quote. This is from John Marshall, his son, who's in it. John Marshall said, "I would try to be in the scene with Tippy and Melanie because they felt better when I was nearby. We grouped together as a family. Not that we thought Dad was really trying to kill us, but it really seemed like he was out for us for some reason."
No, that's an understatement.
And John Marshall in an interview had said that if this was a movie he was making, he would never, ever involve his own family in something like this because it was so dangerous. And it was. There was every single scene you watch in this movie is unpredictable. At any point, these cats could have lost their minds and attacked these actors. There's so much to talk about. There was a scene where Tippi Hedren, in her level of exhaustion, sits back, and this is a funny scene. She sits back and puts her head against the wall and kind of like slams her head on the wall, which causes a shelf above her holding canned food and honey to slip and fall. Now, I guess what I'm supposed to take away from this is that one of the cans knocks her out, but it really just looks like she decides to peacefully go to sleep.
It looks like she just takes a nap.
Yeah, but I think she's supposed to be knocked out. But as she's knocked out, the honey on the shelf begins to drip and covers her entire face. Her entire face is covered with honey. And a cougar walks up to her and licks her face. This is, as they denoted in an interview, the most dangerous scene in the entire movie. This is where a big cat was eating honey off her face. They didn't. If it attacked her, they couldn't have stopped it. It was too close. Now, when I was younger, I had a friend whose family owned a lot of big cats, and one of them was a panther, much like the cougar that licked her face. And you could see it up close, and I was right by the cage. And when it opens its mouth, these cats, I don't know if you guys know this, these cats, their tongue is not smooth. Their tongue almost has these bristly hairs on it that help hold prey also. And if you got licked by one of these cats, it probably wouldn't feel too good. These tongues are incredibly rough and probably pretty sharp with all these bristly hairs. And this thing licked her entire face. And I remember watching that, and it gave me chills, thinking like, oh my God. And they said that was their most tense, dangerous scene that they shot. But all the scenes were dangerous.
God. I'm reading a piece of a review here from the trailer that says, it's like Walt Disney went insane, shot a snuff version of Swiss Family Robinson.
It feels like a Swiss Family Robinson on that's lost its mind.
Now, real quick,
absolutely.
I want to briefly go through the plot, because the plot's insane too. So he opens up. He's expecting his family, who have already arrived. They're already waiting. Like, the movie opens with him talking about his family coming, and they are literally already waiting for him. And he does about 50 different things before he decides to leave. So they decide to just go ahead and go there. So we've discussed that briefly. So they get there before him, and all this craziness happens. Then they find a way to another building. And when they get into the building, they decide to rest in there. Well, the lions come across into the building with them, and they all go to sleep in there. So they wake up, and
like
all
the family's sleeping, and the lions come in.
But this is where it's so bizarre. These lions are suddenly like their best friends. Like, there's no, and Jared was talking about the terrible ADR. I think like 2 or 3 times you hear them go, "They're so friendly," and that's not an exaggeration. And it's like suddenly they're just totally fine. And so then the father shows up after he's had his crazy adventures, and he's like, "Oh, you guys are here. Don't you see how friendly they are?" And it's like they just forgotten that the last 30 or 40 minutes of the movie of them being chased around. And then the movie ends, also, he's talking to his family, and he goes, "You guys aren't going to leave." I mean, the house has been destroyed too, by the way. The house inside the house has been completely destroyed. And so the father's like, "Oh, you guys aren't going to leave, are you?" And the one son's like, "Well, I don't have to be to Chicago for like 2 weeks or something." But as he's saying that, this lion jumps on him, and it's like him trying to say his lines without sounding like that's actually what he wants to do. Like, when you know inside he's like, no, I want to get the hell out of here is what I want to do. But instead he's like, no, I don't have to be, I'm going to Chicago for 2 weeks. And then they show them doing various things, like sitting around eating dinner, and the lines are laying. But my favorite is they show Noel Marshall and Tippi, is that her name?
Tippi Hedren.
Tippi Hedren. They're sitting there together with a lion, and they're like kind of cuddled up, and the lion like starts licking her face, and she's trying to like act like it's not a big deal, but clearly she's completely uncomfortable, and that kind of like exemplifies the whole. It's Noel Marshall running around trying to convince people that they aren't going to die, but these people instinctively know, yes, I'm going to die.
You know, Tippi Hedren she had a lot of these cats. She was very familiar with a lot of these cats in her house, in the compound. But, you know, there's a scene when they were in the lake. I don't know if it was before the elephant or after the elephant, but they're in the lake and in the water. And there's a scene where Tippi is on like an opposite side of vegetation in the water, and there's a tiger on the other side. And if you watch this scene, the tiger all of a sudden spots her and starts to charge in the water very fast. And the look of pure terror that comes over her face as she sees the tiger, she runs for the camera. And they kept it in there. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. You know, I mentioned earlier that this movie was plagued by financing problems for good reason. One of their investors from Japan showed up, and there's several of them in, you know, business suits. This is the late 70s when, you know, the Japanese economic boom was happening, and these guys came in, you know, it was like gung ho, and they come to the set, and all of a sudden Noel Marshall appears out of nowhere with chasing after big lions. He's stark naked,
nude,
bleeding, covered in blood where he'd been bitten on the back of the neck. He has 2 giant puncture wounds, and he's screaming like a banshee at these lions. And this is the first time they met Noel Marshall. And
so of course they give him money.
No, they
canceled their funding.
They backed out. They went, nope, no thanks.
So this movie took 4 years to shoot, and it took 11 years for all the production and editing to finally be financed and finished.
Well, here's a quick aside, because since we're talking about what a lunatic Noel Marshall was, he's listed as an executive producer on The Exorcist, but like a big dummy when he made the deal with William Peter Blatty, or Blady, I don't know. He didn't they shook their hands on it, and he didn't sign a contract. So it was years before he got any money from The Exorcist, because of that stupid thing he did. And then it was like at the 11th hour, when they were running out of funding, he finally won this court case, and he got like a ton of money from The Exorcist, and that's how they were able to finish the movie.
Noel Marshall was insane, but he was also very smart.
Yeah.
You know, he opened back in the 80s, he opened up a commercial production company that shot commercials, and it made him like unbelievably rich. Like, he was very smart, and he was a big risk taker, and this is the kind of lunatic, and everyone has known somebody like Noel Marshall in their life, that the zest for adrenaline life, that adrenaline living, is paramount to how they exist. And Noel Marshall epitomized that kind of lunacy that can take somebody. I don't know if they were into drugs. I don't know what they were, but they were very heavy into the conservation-esque part of the cats thing. And
you know, they were smoking weed with those lions.
Noel Marshall is the kind of person that believed in his head that you can be one with nature and commune and have this kind of normalized relationship with these wild animals, which is not the case.
No.
It's, you know,
but
what?
He believed it.
It's actually kind of terrible that those giant cats grew up in a house, you know, because, I mean, that's just not... And what's funny is that in the movie, you know, I have a cat, bless him, 17 years old, legs. Watching the giant cats in that movie in a household setting, that they were doing things that cats do. They were jumping up on shelves, but they're 500 pounds. You know, they're jumping onto tables. I mean, my cat does that, but he's 11 pounds. It's just it's strange and unnatural to see that kind of thing. There is a scene in this movie that made me laugh quite a bit. So the villain, quote unquote, of the piece is Togar. He is a
He's always covered in
giant-
blood.
Yes, he's covered in blood, so you know he's the bad guy. And he has his mane has like hair ripped out of. He's a tough looking dude. So Togar attacks the house when the family's there without the doctor. And one thing that amused me is that they would go in a room, close the door. He would smash through the door. They would go through another door.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like this never-ending hallway of doors because he just kept busting through, and they'd keep going to another room. And it seemed to me, I don't know, kind of like a fun house or something, the never-ending hallway of doors and rooms.
But that was actually like a tense scene, though, because
because
you could see the power that lion has.
Well, also because the walls and doors are falling on the actors as they're trying to escape a 500-pound lion.
Yes.
I mean, it's terrifying.
Who's covered in blood.
It's absolutely
and crazy looking.
Oh man, this movie is an original. It's got a cult status going for a good reason.
Deservedly so, yes.
You know, the movie didn't have a U.S. release. They didn't agree on a U.S. release. In fact, they secured rights for international release. They got $17 million together, and they managed to get this released all over the world. And it grossed $2 million.
Yeah, it was a bomb.
So it was an unbelievable financial failure, and it ruined them. And it ruined them in the movie business, and everyone kind of
ruined
went
their
different
marriage.
directions.
They divorced after that.
And Tippy Hedren to this day thinks that he's crazy, which
he is.
He died in 2010 of brain cancer, which is
Who would have seen that coming?
Yeah, I mean,
he was either going to be eaten by a lion or brain cancer. So,
well, the only
probably already had it when they made that movie.
Oh man,
he
was a truly unique bird. That one.
I just wonder how many people who watched this movie upon its initial release understood what they were watching, like that. These people's lives were really in danger. These weren't. It wasn't special effects. This wasn't safe. I mean, these people could have died at any time.
It was the most reckless movie ever made. There is no other way to say it. This is the most reckless movie ever made, and I highly. You know what? I'm gonna wait. Let's grade it. Let's grade this movie. Mike, what do you give it?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm going to have to give it a B because as bad as it is, there's entertainment value. I mean, you have to watch it. If you enjoy movies, you have to watch it. But you have to know the backstory behind it. Otherwise, it comes across as just a bad movie.
Yeah, you're right. This is one is worth researching before you watch it. I'm going to give it a solid B. I'll give it a B, definitely.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with that. It's a B. The movie is not good by any stretch, but it is a fascinating experiment of irresponsible craziness.
You see an actual madman on camera.
Yeah, it's like a home movie for an hour and a half of a lunatic and his family with their cats, and you'll never watch another movie like this, and you should watch this movie because it's unbelievable.
On a side note, Noel Marshall looks like Lazarus from the original Star Trek
He
series.
does. What of Lazarus?
But no, everyone highly recommend going out and see this movie. Roar. Noel Marshall.
Roar.
Roar.
It's
Oh man, it is something else.
It's just unbelievable. But that's a good one, man. Season 2's rocking here. Retroactive Rewind review.
Man, well, I tell you what, I better sign out of here because Legs is looking at me with this gleam in his eye, and I'm feeling an urge to put on my tidy whities and run around my neighborhood.
They're so friendly.
Bite you until you get gangrene.
Oh man, horrific.
All right, well that's it, guys. I hope that if you've listened to this, that you'll give it a whirl, give it a listen.
I'm gonna go back and watch Roar. I'm gonna go watch it right now.
I think it's definitely worth a watch. You won't believe your eyes.
Yeah, I'm gonna get on my rowboat and row out of here. So, hey, leave me alone. Stop that. Let me go. Come on, Robbie.
You might get pawed on camera for a good 5 minutes.
Oh crap! Togar's coming. Ah, crap.
You know you can't live without this content. So subscribe to the Hyperspace Podcasting in the 25th Century. Follow us on social media. Leave us a review. And join us next time as we take you into the 25th century.
What are you drawing?
A liger.
What's a liger?
It's pretty much my favorite animal. It's like a lion and a tiger mixed. Bred for its skills and magic.